Okay, hopefully you are watching this video after you have been given your 9.1 through 9.3 quiz back. Hopefully at this point you have your quiz on your desk and you have this quiz corrections page on your desk. What I would like for you to do is to completely ignore the front side. You're probably noticing that you got a score for this quiz based on your front side only. The back has either like an X or maybe the word good written or a check mark or something along those lines to indicate if you got the answers right or the answers wrong on number 12, 13, and 14. As I was grading number 12, 13, and 14, it became very apparent to me that we have not done enough practice with completing the square. You have enough practice, it looks like, on vertex form and graphing from vertex form, but the graphing after you complete the square to get vertex form looks like we need a little bit more practice. So what I would like for you to do right now is put your quiz to the side, and on the quiz corrections page, on the one that says corrections, I want you to put, I want you to write on this one. So on number 12, let's get started with completing the square. This is not in a squared format, okay? We don't have parentheses squared. So we need to get that. We need to look over at the left-hand side, or I'm sorry, at the right-hand side, and notice that this guy right here is an x squared, this guy right here is an x. That positive 6 does not belong. So we need to get rid of that positive 6 by subtracting 6 on both sides. Most of the time, instead of function notation, I use y equals just because it looks nicer. You're welcome to use obviously whatever works, okay? So when we get to this part right here, we've got our x squared, we've got our x together, we've gotten rid of our constant or moved it over to the other side. We're now ready to complete the square. To complete the square, you've got to fill in your parentheses part. You also have to fill in your blank. Let's start with completing the square. What completes this parentheses squared? Well, obviously there's an x out front, and then you have to take half of this -2. So you've got to do a -2 divided by 2, which gives you a -1. So that -1 goes right there. So -2 divided by 2 is half, right? That's how we get this part. Now, if you take the -1 and you square it, what is -1 multiplied by -1? -1 multiplied by -1 is a +1. And what you do on one side, you must do to the other. So I'm going to squeeze in a +1 on both sides. If I simplify a -6 plus 1, that's going to give me a -5. I'm going to stop right there. To get this parenthesis, I took half of -2 and got -1. To get these blanks, I did -1 times -1, which gave me +1, and that's why I added it on both sides, to keep it equal. Now, I need to get y by itself. This -5 has got to go. So to move a -5, we add 5 on both sides. This is now in vertex form. And when you have vertex form has a parentheses squared with a number out back. This is vertex form. This was standard form. So I gave you standard form, you converted into vertex form. Why do we want vertex form? We want vertex form so that we can state the vertex and make a table and graph. So from vertex form, you can say that the vertex is okay. Finding the vertex is easy, it's okay. You can do it, everybody can do it. What is the opposite of a -1? +1. Keep whatever number is out back. If I am keeping whatever number is out back, I'm keeping a 5. Opposite, keep. So on your paper, you should have had a 1, 5 as your vertex. If you didn't, you do now. You have it on this corrections page. Now, you have to count what comes after 1. Hopefully you're thinking 2. And what comes after 2? Hopefully you're thinking 3. Now, to get the y values, you just have to use a calculator. You can plug back into your vertex form, or you can go back up to standard form and plug in. I prefer plugging into the standard form. So I'm going to do parentheses x squared. Well, my first x is a 2. So I need to do 2 squared. and then minus 2x, which means minus 2 times 2, and then plus 6. My first number is going to be a 6. Now I'm going to plug in 3. Everywhere there was an x, I'm going to plug in 3. So 3 squared minus 2 times 3 plus 6 gives me a 9. My table of values is 1, 5, 2, 6, and 3, 9. That is half of my parabola. Don't forget, your AOS goes through your vertex. So this essentially is your dashed line that goes through the middle. If you want to put your AOS on your graph, you're welcome to do that. And now all you have to do is mirror image those dots. If we mirror image this guy, and if we mirror image this guy, this creates the entire parabola for number 12. So if you didn't get that one right on your first quiz, you do have it right on this one. All right, let's go to number 13. On number 13, all I wanted you to do was complete the square. Typically, the next step is to complete the square. What goes in here? Well, it's the same thing as what went in here. How did we get x minus 1 up here? We took half of negative 2. So what do I take half of? I take half of my 12. What's negative 12 divided by 2? Hopefully you're thinking 6. So if we would complete this square, we would get an x minus 6. Now if we go backwards, what do we do with this negative 6 to fill in our blank? We do negative 6 squared. What is negative 6 squared? So many people were not putting parentheses around the negative 6. Or they were putting the square inside of the parentheses. No, 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 do not do this. Your negative 6 has to be squared. Negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. And if you add 36 on this side, you better add 36 on this side or it is not equal. That is your answer. It's the same thing we did up here whenever we squared our negative 1. If you add 1 on this side, you have to add 1 on this side or it's not equal. These numbers have to be the same. A lot of people didn't even have the same number on both sides. So what you're adding on one side has to be the same as what you add on the other side or it's not equal. It's like the example I gave in class. If I give 35 or 36 bonus points to the right side of the classroom, I have to give 36 bonus points to the left side of the classroom or these guys are going to be mad. That was the example I used in class. These numbers have to be the same. All right, the last one. If you didn't get it right, or even if you did, you're writing all of these down. Everybody is going to turn in this paper. Everybody is going to have all 3 of these perfectly correct, okay? So now let's go to number 14. On number 14, we have to complete the square. We have to get rid of anything that doesn't belong. Well, this right here has an x in it. This right here has an x in it. This 8 right here doesn't. We got to get rid of him. So to get rid of a positive in math, you minus. And what you do on one side, you do to the other. You got to keep it equal. This is what we've got so far. Now, complete the square. What goes in this square? What is half of 6? Hopefully you're thinking 3, so this should be an x plus 3. Now, what's 3 times 3? That's 9. If you add 9 here, you have to add 9 here. If you add 36 here, you have to add 36 here. If you add 1 here, you have to add 1 here. If you add 9 here, you have to add 9 here. Are you seeing a pattern, hopefully? Now let's simplify this. What's negative 8 plus 9? 1. Now opposite operations, guys. How do you get rid of square? You square root. And what you do on one side, you do to the other. A square root and a square cancel, leaving you with x plus 3 equals, the square root of 1 is 1. So we've got a positive and a negative 1 on this side. How do you get rid of plus 3? you minus 3. I always write these separately so that I can see that I should get 2 answers. Sometimes those 2 answers are the same number. Sometimes they're different, but I always write them differently. I need a positive 1 minus 3. I need a negative 1 minus 3. Positive 1 minus 3 should give you negative 2. There's my first answer. Negative 1 minus 3 should give you negative 4. That tells you this parabola has 2 answers. It crosses the x-axis 2 times. It crosses the x-axis at negative 2. It crosses the x-axis at negative 4. Number 12, number 13, and number 14 were all 9.3 problems. All standards that were covered in 9.3. If you did not get your 9.3 practice 1 finished or your 9.3 practice 2 finished, that's likely why you didn't do well on this side of the quiz. If you got 9.1 and 9.2 homework finished, then you probably did pretty well on the front. If you need to go back and make some corrections on those homework assignments, then now's the time to do that. You need to make sure that you're doing your homework before quizzes so that you're ready and prepared for what's going to be on the quiz. At this time, everybody should have a 100% on the back side of their quiz corrections. Now it's your choice. Do you like the grade that you got on the front, or do you not? If you missed something and you'd like to make corrections, now's the time to do that. Only fix the ones that you missed on the front side. Even if you just missed the x equals, now's the time to fix that. Make sure you put your name at the top and turn this in. Even if you're not going to do the corrections, or if you got a 100, you can just say, I got a 100 and put your name right here. But everybody needs to put their name on this and turn it in so that I can see that you now know how to do completing the square to get vertex form so that you can graph. Completing the square so that you know what to add on both sides. And completing the square so that you can get your solutions.